We are extremely happy to greet you here. And I know you are in sunny California, and that's the first question. Maybe you have some special feelings seeing the snow setting of the Alps here.
I do, but normally I would have it a little bit more of I would have a more homesickness, but since we're all stuck inside because of the virus, I don't feel so bad being in Los Angeles right now, having a little bit warmer and being able to go to the parks and the ocean. So this is maybe the first time in my life that I don't feel so homesick.
Oh, but of course we know that the mountains are a special inspiration to you, not only because of Lise Guyer, you're going to tell us a bit about her, but also it's very visible in your motifs in the tapestry you do. And the tapestries show a lot of mountainscapes, pine trees, fairy tale scenes of wood, Waldschrate, I don't know, all these mythical figures from the Alpine mythology.
Yes, for sure.
How did you start with your tapestry? How did you decide that you wanted to use this medium, which is a medium of longue durée, actually? It's our theme of this year's engadinarttalks, and longue durée is, of course, the weaving process is taking a long time. Tell us about this.
It does take a long time, and I think I started at a time where I had a lot of time, and it was really appealing to me because I always had something to do. I could always go weave. But I guess the way I started weaving was for a completely different reason, and it was because I wanted to learn how to make patterns. I was looking a lot at the Bauhaus, and I was not that crazy about it until then. One winter, I went to Davos and visited the Kirchner Museum. And there I stumbled across this book about Lise Guyer and the tapestries that she created in collaboration. I find it's more like a collaboration with Kirchner, and was just completely blown away by it. And I've never been that big of a fan of Kirchner's, but when I saw these tapestries, I was just, wow, it just opened something up, and I started weaving, and I haven't stopped since, because it seems like it was something completely natural to me that I didn't know about. So yes.
Yes, this is obvious and visible in your tapestry, even also the color, the hues and the depths and the color palette reminds so very much this dark wooden surroundings with the all white somehow in the back. I wanted to ask you, when you do develop your stories or fairy tales, is it that you draw it and you weave it, or you develop it in the process of weaving?
Well, I think that's why I was really also drawn to the title, because I draw a lot, and it's not so much that I think of stories, but it's just sort of to get things out of my system, and it's very quick, and I'm not thinking too much, and I'm just putting it out there. And I think then after that, when it goes on the loom, like there's this time that goes by where you're, in some ways, you're removed from the actual drawing, but you're also really close to it, like on a more emotional level. It's not that you understand it, because I always think when you paint, you kind of like you have this painting, and you can step back, and then you can look at it, and you can change things, and it's a very cerebral process, in my opinion. And I've always struggled with it because it makes me question everything all the time, and it's too much. And I think with a tapestry or with a weaving, these ideas that kind of pop up that don't have really they don't really have a narrative. It's more of a moment that has to be put on paper. And then with this long sort of process where I'm in it, but I'm removed from it at the same time. And then once it comes off the loom, I have this work that I can look at and kind of step back and go, well, I can't change much anymore because it is what it is, but I can look at it now and kind of try to start figuring out what happened.
So it's a thought also for thinking through weaving. Is it a sort of
thinking
process through weaving while weaving?
Yes, for sure. And also a removal from, because I sometimes think like it's like going to therapy, or that you have a problem and then you have someone else and you talk about something with them and they can kind of like put it in perspective for you. And I think that's what's happening during this process. It sort of is put in perspective through the repetitive motion. And when you are weaving something, you don't see the whole thing. You see like this much of a gigantic thing. So
yes, there is a certain sound here which might interfere when we speak. So we go inside, and also it's really very cold here.
I can tell in your faces.
So just keep, I think we keep the setting. I carry the computer inside, and you just stay.
Oh, people ice skating, how nice.
Yeah, you see. Yeah, that was the noise. Okay. So, stop.
I have a question. How long is the weaving process taking in an average size of one of your textiles?
Depends. It's hard to tell.
There are small ones and huge ones.
The bigger ones.
The big one, I don't know. They can take up from. It also depends on how motivated I am to finish it. So it's I don't know. It also depends on how complicated it is. So it's not really. If something is more detailed, it takes longer, and if something is less detailed, it takes less long. So if it's just stripes, it goes pretty fast. But if let's say like I'd have a pattern on a chair that was really intricate, it would take longer. So it's hard to tell how long they really take. But I mean, I have maybe I could say that setting up the loom, just putting the strings in, which is always the same, putting in the strings, tying them up, tightening it, that's always a whole day. So just to set it up is at least a day to start. That makes any sense?
Yes. I mean, it's obvious that somehow this LongueDurée of the weaving process, of your engagement also emotionally with what you do and what the images probably evocate in this process. And at the same time, all these moments you depict are just short events. So there is a paradox of this notion of time, of the LongueDurée, of the making, and the the moment which is then depicted, and this highly loaded, psychologically loaded motifs you use. All these amazing, aggressive scenes of figures, people connected and not being able to be calm or controlled. It's all uncontrolled emotion which is depicted, and high dramatic moments. Yes?
Yeah, and then I always think like someone cannot take it in within a moment as well, and that's kind of the beauty of it, I think. I mean, that's just I think that's what I like about visual art too. Like you can just, I mean, not that a movie would be the same, but you can look at a painting too. It takes someone years, and you can take that in an instant, and hopefully then over time get more out of it. Yeah.
Also, I think it's interesting how you also work with the threads. There are these intensely colored, wonderful wools, and then at the same time, from time to time you leave like spaces where you see the grid of the thin threads, which are like the holding structure, no? And I think this is very interesting. How did you come about to do this, to use this kind of
it just came quite natural, and it's just because you're in front of this grid all the time, it sort of comes naturally that you would think, oh well, I could actually use this within the story itself. To me, the grid structure also, there's something where it's almost like drawing a little bit, where you take the thread and you can kind of, because it's under tension. So when you have the strings on the loom, it's really, really tight. It's like sometimes the whole loom almost falls over because you can tighten it so hard that the sheer force of the string will tip the whole loom over. I don't know if that makes sense. It's really like, it's under tension. So it's almost like a canvas that you could take a thread and you can kind of make a drawing. But then once you take it off the loom, it kind of falls apart, and it's really unpredictable. And I think that I think there's a beauty in that and then you have this sort of limp thing. Then once you put it up again on the wall, it has its own, like it sort of has its own presence, because then it gets pulled by gravity, but it's different. So it just changes all the time. And if the grid is not as densely filled with colored yarns, it has a bit more of a life of its own.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I also remember just one of these motifs where there is an arm holding a baby, and it's all it's like washed out colors. It's like so fragile and so pale, and this poor baby, it's hanging in the air like a cat or something, and it's wonderful. It's Geworfenheit. Well,
there is this famous, you have to help me, there is this famous image of slapping. Maria slaps the child.
Oh yeah, this is Max Ernst.
Max Ernst.
Yeah, but this is like humorous, and hers is more existential. Really, it's like I don't know. There is this German word in philosophy, die Geworfenheit. No, you enter the world and you are just thrown into the world. It's this kind of gesture. You freeze.
Can we see that image?
I could show you a drawing I have, but it's kind of it's actually really different. Mm-hmm. Because I started it like this, as a drawing, which is completely different. Where I thought,
it's just the arm and the hand, and the baby is completely in the air. Yeah.
Yeah, it started with the baby being sort of like thrown in the water, not being able to swim.
Yeah.
But it's like more like, it's getting pulled out of this nowhere or thrown into this nowhere kind of.
Yeah. So it's actually, it's a LongueDurée of a freezing process. What you do with wool, you freeze an image, you freeze emotions, you freeze high tension.
Yes, and I mean, it's actually, I always like the idea that it really is under tension when you make it. And then once it comes off, and it's a material too. Like, I feel like it changes the second it comes off of this tension. It becomes this material. It becomes like an object. You could use it as a blanket and keep warm.
So that your image, your frame, is vertical. I see it. We see it behind you, and. Yes, we just saw this morning a woman who's also doing more carpets and blankets, and she says she's weaving horizontally.
Yeah. So the Lies Goya also wove horizontally. And so apparently in Switzerland, it used to be very common that a house would have a loom inside.
I have a question. Hans-Ulrich Obrist used to ask as last, what do you think would be your unrealized project?
What would be my unrealized project?
What is your unrealized?
My unrealized project at this point? I think it would, that's really hard to actually answer, but the first thing that comes to mind is like, I'd like to have 6 kids, but that's never going to happen, or like 7 kids.
I love it.
Throw them all in the bath.
So yeah, that would be my answer, I guess, for now. I'm sure I'm going to come up with a lot better answers later.